You know, he's very attractive, he's very talented, but I'd had some funky times with him that were making me very, very unsure if that was going to be a match.
For decades, audiences believed Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze shared one of cinema's most natural love stories. Their chemistry in Dirty Dancing felt effortless, intimate, almost personal. What most viewers never saw was how tense their relationship actually was when the cameras stopped rolling. Long before the film became a cultural landmark, the two actors were already at odds, shaped by clashing personalities and unresolved resentment. Years later, after Patrick Swayze's death, Jennifer began to speak more openly about what really happened between them. What emerged was not a scandal, but a far more complicated truth. Stay tuned as we reveal the truth. The chemistry everyone believed when Dirty Dancing was released in 1987, few expected it to become a defining romantic film of its era. The story was modest, the budget limited, and the cast largely unknown. What carried it beyond those limitations was the connection between its two leads. Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze appeared so attuned to each other that audiences assumed familiarity, comfort, even affection. Their movements looked practiced beyond rehearsal. Their silences felt intentional. Viewers read intimacy into every glance. That perception became part of the film's identity. Interviews, promotional material, and later retrospectives leaned into the idea that something rare had happened on screen. Jennifer and Swayze were often described as perfectly matched, their chemistry framed as accidental magic rather than construction. The public belief suggested two actors who understood each other, who trusted one another enough to make vulnerability look effortless. What often goes unexamined is how much of that impression was shaped by editing, choreography, and audience projection. Chemistry, especially in dance-driven films, is not always rooted in warmth. It can emerge from tension, discomfort, and imbalance. In Dirty Dancing, the story itself depends on friction. Johnny Castle is guarded and controlling. Baby Houseman is unsure, observant, and reactive. Their dynamic is not built on ease, but on negotiation. That structure allowed viewers to mistake strain for romance. The push and pull between the characters aligned so closely with the film's emotional arc that few questioned whether those feelings existed only within the script. The finished product left little room for doubt. Whatever existed between the actors seemed real enough. The cultural afterlife of the film reinforced that belief. Dirty Dancing became shorthand for youthful desire and emotional awakening. Its stars were frozen in that moment, repeatedly referenced as an iconic pair rather than two individuals with separate careers and experiences. Over time, the assumption hardened into fact. Jennifer and Swayze were remembered as collaborators who must have shared something meaningful to produce work that resonated so deeply. What made this assumption particularly strong was how little counter-narrative existed at the time. Neither actor publicly challenged the story while the film's popularity was at its peak. Silence filled the gaps, allowing fans to build their own explanations. The absence of visible conflict was interpreted as harmony. Before Dirty Dancing, there was another set, another dynamic, and an impression that never fully faded. The first encounter before Dirty Dancing placed Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze at the center of a romantic narrative. They shared the screen in a very different environment. Red Dawn, released in 1984, was a militarized Cold War fantasy built around aggression, survival, and rigid hierarchy. The set itself reflected those themes. Long shooting days, physical exhaustion, and a cast dominated by young male actors created an atmosphere that rewarded toughness and conformity. Patrick Swayze fit easily into that world. He was physically confident, intensely focused, and deeply committed to discipline. His background in dance and athletics shaped how he approached work. He expected repetition, precision, and endurance, both from himself and from others. On Red Dawn, that approach aligned with the film's tone and was often encouraged. Jennifer Grey's experience was different. She was newer, more introspective, and less interested in posturing. The environment felt closed off rather than collaborative. Jennifer later described feeling out of place, not because of her role, but because of the dynamic around her. What read as confidence in Swayze came across to her as dominance. What others accepted as leadership registered as pressure. Their interactions during that production were limited, but the impression lingered. Jennifer did not see Swayze as a partner. She saw him as someone who took up space in a way that left little room for vulnerability. That unresolved feeling mattered. When Dirty Dancing began casting years later, Jennifer was not enthusiastic about working with Swayze again. Her reluctance was not rooted in professional doubt. It came from memory. She associated him with an earlier experience that had left her feeling diminished rather than supported. From Swayze's perspective, there is little evidence that he recognized this tension at the time. He moved forward in his career with momentum, his reputation shaped by commitment and control. What Jennifer carried forward emotionally may not have registered as conflict to him at all. This imbalance in perception became the foundation for what followed. When two people enter a project with different histories of the same encounter, they do not start on equal ground. One sees a colleague. The other sees a reminder. That difference shaped every interaction that came later. Dirty Dancing begins under strain. By the time Dirty Dancing moved into active development, Jennifer Grey was not the obvious choice to return opposite Patrick Swayze. Her earlier experience with him had left enough discomfort that she hesitated when his name surfaced during casting discussions. The hesitation was personal, not strategic. She understood his ability. What she questioned was the cost of working alongside him again. The production itself was unstable from the outset. The script had been revised multiple times, the budget was modest, and the studio viewed the project as a risk. Casting decisions were driven less by ideal combinations and more by practical constraints. When Swayze emerged as a strong candidate for Johnny Castle, the focus shifted toward finding someone who could match his physicality and presence. Jennifer fit that requirement, even if the partnership came with complications. According to later accounts, Jennifer expressed reservations during the casting process. Those concerns did not stop the production. The chemistry test mattered more than personal history. When the two were placed together in auditions, the tension was visible, but so was the effect it created on screen. What registered privately as resistance read publicly as intensity. That distinction proved decisive. Once filming began, the strain did not ease. Jennifer entered the project feeling emotionally guarded. Swayze arrived with clear expectations about preparation and control. Their approaches did not align. Where he valued repetition and precision, she worked through feeling and reaction. Neither method was wrong, but the lack of overlap made collaboration difficult. The set environment amplified these differences. With limited time, rehearsals were supposed to prepare them for the camera, but instead they revealed just how differently Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze worked. What looked effortless on screen came at a cost behind the scenes. The emotional friction, the tension between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze became clear as soon as rehearsals for Dirty Dancing began. This was not a movie that could rely on dialogue alone. Its story depended on dancing, movement, and timing. Every small mistake was noticeable. Every pause or hesitation disrupted the flow. Rehearsals were not just practice, they were tests, revealing discomfort and differences that neither actor could ignore. Patrick Swayze approached rehearsals with intense focus. He was a trained dancer and believed that perfecting the steps was the most important thing. For him, emotions could come later, once the technique was right. Repetition and precision were his priority. He expected the same from those around him. Mistakes frustrated him, not because he wanted to be cruel, but because he wanted every movement to feel authentic on camera. Jennifer Grey had a different approach. She needed to feel safe and comfortable to perform her best. Dancing was tied to emotion and trust for her. When she felt pressured or uneasy, it became difficult to move naturally. Their styles clashed. What Swayze saw as focus and discipline, Jennifer experienced as tension and control. The difference created friction from the very first day of rehearsal. Reports from the set describe rehearsals growing increasingly tense. Swayze would push Grey to repeat steps again and again until they were perfect. Jennifer often became frustrated and exhausted. At one point, she even broke down and needed a short break. These were not dramatic moments meant for cameras. They were the natural outcome of physical strain and emotional pressure. The repetitive dancing, long hours, and constant scrutiny created a stress that was hard to manage. Swayze later admitted that he sometimes lost patience. He explained that it came from stress and the high stakes of the film, not from a desire to dominate. Gray, however, felt pushed beyond her limits. The difference in perception created quiet but constant tension, which neither of them fully acknowledged at the time. Both were committed to the film, but their methods and expectations rarely aligned. The imbalance between them was also about authority. Swayze was older, more experienced, and physically confident. Gray, while central to the story, often felt less secure in the dynamic. Every correction, every note, and every silent disagreement added weight. Neither actor had the tools to address the discomfort directly, so it accumulated over time. Despite the stress, the rehearsals produced results. The dance sequences improved with each session. Movements became sharper, timing became precise, and scenes started to feel complete. The irony was that the same tension that made rehearsals difficult also strengthened the on-screen performance. The pressure created a kind of energy that the camera captured in ways neither actor expected. For Gray, rehearsals reopened old feelings of frustration from earlier projects, including her experience on Red Dawn. It wasn't a single argument or problem, it was the sum of many small pressures, each adding weight to her discomfort. For Swayze, the focus remained on finishing the work and maintaining the film's quality. His intensity was not meant as personal criticism, but it often felt that way to Gray. By the time filming began, their working relationship had already been defined. Trust had not been built. Boundaries were unclear. What existed was a functional partnership, held together by necessity rather than understanding. On camera, the tension produced moments of striking realism. The hesitation, the charged glances, the subtle pull and push in the dance sequences were all enhanced by the unresolved friction behind the scenes. Off-screen, rehearsals created stress and distance. On-screen, they created chemistry that would define the film for decades. The moment of production. By the time filming of Dirty Dancing was underway, the tension between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze had reached a critical point. Rehearsals had tested both their patience and endurance. Every dance sequence, every close interaction, demanded precision and trust, two things that had not fully developed between them. The production schedule was tight, and the pressure from the studio added another layer of stress. What had begun as quiet friction was starting to threaten the flow of the project itself. On several occasions, Jennifer's frustration became visible. Long days of repeated takes and physical strain left her exhausted. One particular scene required multiple lifts and complicated steps, and Jennifer struggled to execute them under the watchful eye of Swayze and the director. According to crew accounts, she broke down at one point, tears forming as she stepped away from the set. The moment was not dramatic for effect, it was the culmination of exhaustion, anxiety, and the weight of working under constant scrutiny. Swayze, meanwhile, felt pressure from a different angle. He carried much of the responsibility for the physical credibility of the dances. Any misstep reflected on him as much as on Gray. Frustration and impatience occasionally surfaced, and his attempts to correct and guide Gray sometimes added tension instead of relief. Neither actor intended to create conflict, but the combination of personalities, expectations, and physical demands created a fragile situation. The studio and production team were aware that filming was challenging, but they did not intervene in personal dynamics directly. Their focus remained on completing the project. To outsiders, the production seemed smooth. On the inside, there were whispers that the relationship between the leads might affect the schedule. Crew members described moments of silence and unease on set, subtle indicators that stress had reached a breaking point. Despite the strain, the film did not stop. Gray and Swayze pushed through, sometimes in silence, sometimes with terse communication. Every completed scene reinforced the paradox. The very tension that made collaboration difficult also heightened the authenticity of their on-screen chemistry. The danger of collapse became the invisible engine driving their work. By the time principal photography wrapped, the production had survived, but the experience left lasting impressions. Gray's discomfort and Swayze's intensity were never fully resolved. The tension between Jennifer and Patrick became part of the film itself. What felt effortless on screen was often rooted in real unease behind the scenes. Why the tension worked on screen despite the strain behind the scenes, Dirty Dancing came together in a way that felt effortless to audiences. The pauses, the glances, the subtle hesitation between Jennifer and Patrick gave the film a realism that many viewers assumed was natural. What few knew was that much of that intensity came from the unresolved tension between them, not from personal affection. Patrick's focus on technical precision and Jennifer's need for emotional comfort created a unique dynamic. Their differences, which had caused friction during rehearsals, translated. Crew members later recalled that Jennifer and Patrick's interactions were unpredictable. Some days were stiff or cautious, other days, charged and precise. That variability added authenticity. The moments that seemed spontaneous to viewers often came from careful navigation of discomfort rather than natural intimacy. Their ability to perform under these conditions turned tension into energy that the film needed. Even the iconic lifts and dance sequences benefited from this dynamic. Patrick's control and strength, combined with Jennifer's cautious responsiveness, made every movement believable. The audience saw emotion, connection, and trust. What they didn't see was the effort, the stress, and the repeated practice it took to create those moments. Every scene became a balance of endurance and subtle negotiation between the two actors. It is also important to note that neither Patrick nor Jennifer intentionally used tension to enhance the film. They were simply doing their jobs under difficult circumstances. Yet the combination of Patrick's intensity and Jennifer's sensitivity created an electric realism. The friction that made working together challenging also made the performances resonate decades later. Ultimately, the struggle off-screen became an unseen force on screen. Tension, discomfort, and occasional misalignment produced moments that felt intimate, spontaneous, and passionate. The chemistry audiences adored was not the result of a close friendship or easy collaboration, it was the product of two skilled actors navigating difficult circumstances, using discipline, emotional awareness, and resilience to turn conflict into art. When filming ended, the intensity between Jennifer and Patrick didn't disappear. What audiences saw as effortless chemistry existed alongside quiet distance and unspoken tension. Their relationship after the film, once filming wrapped on Dirty Dancing, the dynamic between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze did not change overnight. The tension that had built during rehearsals and shooting remained unresolved. Despite completing a film that would become iconic, neither felt fully comfortable revisiting the collaboration. There were no public fallouts, no headlines about disputes. Instead, the distance grew quietly, almost invisibly. Jennifer did not seek out Patrick for projects after the film. She declined offers to reunite on other productions, even when doing so could have seemed beneficial for her career. Her decision was not rooted in resentment, exactly, but in self-preservation. She recognized that the discomfort she felt during Dirty Dancing could resurface if they worked together again. Avoidance became the easiest way to maintain professional boundaries. Patrick, for his part, continued his career largely unaware of the depth of Jennifer's reservations. He remained focused on work and public appearances, projecting professionalism and charm. To him, there was no need to address distance unless it interfered with a project. He rarely commented on his relationship with Jennifer in interviews, often emphasizing collaboration and the effort required to bring the film to life. The silence between them lasted for years. When fans or journalists assumed they were close because of the film, Jennifer remained measured in her responses. She rarely offered insight into what it was like to work with Patrick during the production. Despite the distance, both actors acknowledged the importance of the project. Jennifer often spoke about the film's cultural impact and the challenges of performing the dance sequences, but she rarely included personal commentary about Patrick in detail. Patrick similarly recognized Jennifer's contributions without delving into the tension that had existed between them. Their unspoken understanding allowed both to maintain respect while keeping their distance. Over time, the separation became part of the story of the film. Jennifer and Patrick's professional relationship was defined by necessity rather than comfort, and the absence of ongoing collaboration highlighted that reality. Their personal histories had left an imprint, shaping how they approached work with each other and with others. The dynamic that produced on-screen chemistry did not translate into friendship. Even decades later, Jennifer's reflections reveal a careful balance between honesty and discretion. She acknowledges Patrick's skill, dedication, and talent, but she does not romanticize the working relationship. The tension, strain, and discomfort remain a quiet but important part of the story. It is a reminder that successful collaborations are not always built on personal closeness, and that unresolved friction can coexist with remarkable artistry. For Patrick, the story looked different. Where Jennifer felt pressure and distance, Patrick remembered focus, discipline, and the drive to get each scene right. His perspective offers another layer to the story. Patrick's perspective, while Jennifer often describes